So I appreciate your flexibility. I did ask that you guys take the what was it, the quiz number 11. Most of you did. I think still one or two of you in the room need to do that. We should have some time at the end of plenty of time at the end of the class for you to do that. And the schedule for today is over here in case you guys want to write that down or screenshot it or something. So unless you probably already got it in an email or something. I don't know how they get that out to you. All right. Good morning, Zoomers. All right. Francisco is out. Who said? And Chris. Yeah. Oh, how can I take attendance if Skyward is down? That's interesting. All right. Well, you guys will all get credit for being here. I'll mark on here. All right, folks, in person and on Zoom, we're going to get started here. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to share my screen. And I just want to say to you guys on Zoom that and the people that are in class, just put a message on the board here for you guys. And don't have your cell phone out until direct instruction is finished, okay? I'll follow the same rule, okay? When I'm not teaching, I'm not going to lie. Like I said, there's things I got to get done in this computer with Zoom on it, and all the other junk I have to have on it is not as efficient as just getting my phone out and using Google or whatever, my email for school and all that stuff. So Remind, if you guys use that. So I understand that, but like I said, when we're going, headphones, cell phones away, okay? And appreciate that respect. Like I said, obviously I carry earbuds with me too. I mean, I don't know, had them for a while before the pandemic hit. So, like I said, appreciate that. All right. So, since I got the screen shared here, there's two questions I want you guys to answer. And the first one is, and you guys, we're actually going to do this on a Canvas discussion post. Oh, let me go ahead and open that. Hey there. Good afternoon or good morning. The first question is, why did Western Europe turn to feudalism to survive? And the second question is, what was important about the legacy of Charlemagne? Okay, so if you guys open up your Canvas page, you should see this. Make sure that I put it under this module. That might be the issue. Do that real quick. All right, so you guys are going to see this as a 1021 warm-up under week number 12, all right? You guys click on that in Canvas. So go to modules, go to 1021 warm-up. And again, just for participating, you don't have to type in the correct answer per se. You get 5 points just, and this is to reward those of you that are here in Zoom and in person. And then I can take attendance for the virtual people right now. So 1021 warm-up. Why did Europe turn to feudalism to survive? If you guys remember, feudalism was like a loose set of alliances. And then what was important about the legacy of Charlemagne, the man? For those of you that just joined Zoom, the three of you, right now we're under week number 12 module 1021 warm-up. We're answering 2 questions based off of what we talked about yesterday in class. And I'm just taking attendance, so still got people coming. All right, so it looks like I've got 13 responses. Everyone's pretty straight up so far. Those of you that are here in class, anyone want to raise their hand, share what the response was to the first question? So, why did Europe need feudalism to survive? Nathaniel. Yeah, because they were being invaded by the Vikings, the Muslims, and the Magyars. So they needed protection. Most of you guys got that right. Good job. Okay, second one then was what was the legacy of Charlemagne? Anyone in here want to try to answer that? Or if you're on Zoom, if you want to unmute, go ahead and share with the whole class. Just speak up, please. Anybody in here? You guys are all correct. Someone just say it so I can move on. Nathaniel, a little louder though. All right, so he was the first Holy Roman Emperor, and that position of Holy Roman Emperor would last for 1,000 years after. All right, and it was a loose title given by the Pope that said it was the defender of the Christian faith. The other thing that he did was he spread Christianity to a lot more areas around Europe, thus making Europe very Christianized. All right, it will stay that way basically until this thing called the Renaissance, or the rebirth of actual learning and the development of new technology, etc. Okay. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start off with a quick video here. So I'm gonna figure out how to get this over to this screen. I'm gonna stop the share for you guys on here. Those of you in the room, if you didn't do your, if you didn't post your warm up yet, do it. I just went over the answer. It's free 5 points. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. I'm going to now share the second screen. And this is only about 4 minutes, guys. This is about the Vikings, though. And I think this will give you a little bit of perspective on why the Vikings were so intimidating and why the Europeans needed some type of help. All right, so we're going to try to do this. What I need, can you take down, so 1 starts on your left and 4 is on your right on the lights. Can you try to take down all 4? Actually, just the 4th one. Let's see what happens. Yeah, if you don't mind. So you guys can see the screen, right? All right, Zoomers, can you guys see the video right now? Awesome. Yeah. You guys are kind of the guinea pigs every day. So in period 1, we're trying different stuff out. Designed to navigate the most treacherous waters on Earth. Along with almost like an ultra-rated water vehicle that allows you to fight them to go further, deeper, and almost anywhere on the planet. From Scandinavia, Warrior Storm to Europe, Lady, Seven, founding new cities, connecting the northern world. Now, we head west, across the Atlantic Ocean. Mankind on a new journey.
Excuse me, we can't hear it.
Mr. Burnett. All right, guys. Well, it's fun while it lasted, right? All right, sorry about that, guys. Well, gotta find where the freaking mouse is. All right, so you guys can't hear that on Zoom, huh? Is that right? Somebody told me about this. I guess I have to. I thought it was going to automatically make that adjustment. I'm sure that's what these chats are about, right? Yeah.
Can you guys hear it, or is it still silent?
Yeah, I can't hear it at all.
Mr. Burnett, turn on captions. Oh my God. Daniel.
I know he did not just call him Daniel.
Yeah, I did, because he's not listening. Mr. Burnett. I wonder if someone Canvas messages him, will he like then do something?
No, I think
You
it's
know
on
we
his
can't hear it.
computer.
So we're just not gonna hear the whole video.
Probably.
Well, all right. Does anyone want to play Among Us?
Send the code.
Right.
Are you guys back with me here on Zoom? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
We couldn't hear any of the video.
That's unfortunate. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. Basically, it was about how the Vikings terrorized Europe and then settled in Europe and became an important part of the culture. So anybody in the room that actually did get to see it,
captions.
what was the what do you guys think the influence of the Vikings was on Europe? Was it positive, negative? At first it was pretty bad, right? And then over time they started to assimilate, which means they started to kind of become part of the feudalistic culture. And if you were paying attention, that church that was up there was the Notre Dame, which is in Paris, and definitely one of the more famous churches. All right. I will figure that out for next class. Zoomers, sorry about that. We're going to go ahead and move on. So if you guys have your notes from yesterday, or if you, some people yesterday were taking them on their computer using the fancy like touchpad. It's up to you. Some people are writing them down a lot more in second period than this class. We're just going to talk about a few more concepts here today, and we'll be on our merry way. So, when Europe turned to feudalism, basically what happened was they had to be able to protect themselves. And the majority of people were poor as dirt farmers. So to protect themselves, they had to set up this weak political system. Okay, so if you guys look up here, European feudalism was as such. Kings and nobles gave what's called a fief. A fief is a gift. I want to write this down because I promise you, give a double quiz a week from Friday and it's on there. So Jordan, you need to wake up, man. Okay? So a fief is a gift. A king or noble would give away a gift to a vassal. That's a lesser noble. Okay? So a king or noble gives away a gift as a gift would typically be like a parcel of land, rights to a mine, could be a huge piece of land, could be a small piece of land. But the person getting the gift is a vassal, and in return, that vassal had to pledge what's called military service or some kind of services to the Lord. Now, he had to help protect them. So what did the vassal typically have? The vassal typically had knights. Okay, and so there was no standing army, or like where there's thousands of men that are just sitting there waiting to fight. Like Alexander the Great had a huge army, if you guys remember right. I mean, a lot of the places we've learned about have had big armies. Well, Europe falls into this time where they don't have enough people to defend themselves. So each vassal had to pay for a few knights. And then what happened was a lord or a larger king or noble would give away a bunch of different pieces of land. So then when he needed to protect himself, he could call on all of these vassals to bring their knights with him. Okay. And so over time, that land or that gift, the fief, was passed down to the oldest son. That's a fancy word called primogeniture. Okay, you don't need to know that word, but what it means is that land continued to be passed down from generation to generation to the same people. Okay? And so if you were dirt poor and you were a peasant, you were going to stay a peasant the rest of your life. You had no mobility. Okay? Over time, vassals then had to give land to knights in exchange for military service. So the only way to really rise up was to be lucky enough to be a knight, to be trained as a knight as a kid, go from being a squire to a knight, and then you might eventually get a small piece of land, which was called a manor. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. Now, knights were bound by a code of chivalry. Some of you guys have heard of chivalry before. Chivalry was a code that was loosely based off of like the ideals of Christianity and how a knight is supposed to be honorable in battle. So you didn't kill knights in battle. You fought all the time. And people these different vassals started fighting over really odd things like who got to control a river or who got to control a forest or who got to control a particular resource. Like, again, you could have access to some rock or stone or pasture land. And so there'd be all these little petty wars, and they wouldn't kill each other though as knights. What they would do is they would just capture each other, and then they would have to sell them back for ransom. That was kind of part of what we call like the code of chivalry. The other thing was you were supposed to be honorable to women, and you were supposed to like respect women and your lord. That's again the code of chivalry. But I think this is one of the more overplayed things in world history. Knights were pretty nasty people. They were trained to fight. Okay, so to say that they were chivalrous at the same time that they were trained to fight is kind of awkward and goofy. I think movies, if you've ever seen like A Knight's Tale, have made this code into like this like glamorized thing. I mean, knights lived with the animals in the crappy part of a king's or like a noble's house, like with their poop and with straw as their beds. I mean, these weren't this fashionable, sexy, Heath Ledger in The Knight's Tale, which again, that was made way before you guys were born, but that's not what a knight's life was like, okay? Nobody's life was like that because, again, Europe was so backwards at this time. It'd probably be good for you guys on your notes to just jot down how the feudal system worked. You had a king or what's called a liege lord, the top lord at the top. Then you had nobles. They could be called different things in European history. They could be called barons. They could be called kind of aristocrats. But The easiest way to think of them as nobles or lords. And then below them, they had knights. Below the knights then were the peasants. And the peasants made up the majority of society. So here's an easy way to look at it, okay? This is how feudalism worked. It's a weak government system based off of alliances for protection. So king gives away land, powerful lords give away land, and lesser lords give away land, or the knights protect the peasants. In return, you see the other side, the peasants provide the food, okay, the knights provide protection, the lesser lords then provide the army to the more powerful lords, and when the king needs to call on his more powerful lords, he can have an army without having to have to pay for a standing army because he can't afford it. There's not a lot of economic activity. So when the king calls up all the lords, he gets all of their knights to fight. Yeah. Excuse me? Can I finish like maybe about 8 minutes and then go? Okay, great. So what ends up in this system then is it's not very strong. You don't have a lot of like political centralization like we talked about, but it was useful at the time. Okay, what will come out of this obviously is the position of the king becomes more powerful, but there has to be other things that happen. All right, we'll move on here. Okay, over time, again, the position of the knight becomes kind of glamorized here. You can see like a very powerful knight would have a horse, would be able to wield a spear, which was like a jousting stick, would have chainmail, which was metal armor, and it would be expected for his lord to provide him with that, and maybe a sword also. And while you're like, oh, that sounds really basic, it is basic, but on the same time, in Europe at that time, there was little metal. There were very few people that actually knew how to use metal, and like actually like blacksmiths who could make stuff into horseshoes or swords. And so it was very costly to be able to outfit a knight with that stuff. So that knight had to be honorable in battle. Okay. And then over time, the lords, because they collected taxes from the peasants, which I'll show you in a second, they start to build bigger houses. And that's where you start to see, instead of a lord living in a wood hut, okay, with animals in the hut, they start to build bigger and bigger houses, and that's where you start to see the development of the castle. All right, a little bit more here. So the bottom class of society is kind of the most important one to recognize, though, because this is how 85% of the people lived. Poor as dirt farmers, okay, that were required to work their lord's land 3 days a week. Then the rest of the time they could work small plots of land, like a little plot of land. And I'll show you on the next slide. If you look at this, okay, they had a little bit of itty bitty part of land that they were allowed to farm. The rest of it was the Lord's land, and all that food went to the Lord. And then on top of all this, they had to give 10% of what they made to the church of the stuff that they made on their little plot of land. So again, this is called subsistence agriculture because they're barely making enough to be able to exist. All right, so what ends up happening then is the smallest unit of the feudal system was a manor, okay? And you think of a manor as like the size of our classroom. And on that manor would be a mill, a small church, some workshops, like I said, like blacksmith shops, and maybe a little village where the townspeople would have like houses that were made out of like dirt and wood kind of patched together. Very crude houses, not like Rome. You guys remember 2 weeks ago when we were watching video of the Colosseum, how fancy Rome was? Now you're talking about the same people living in dirt houses, okay? Way backwards. Serfs, this is kind of good for you guys to write down and make sure you're listening to. Bound to the land for life. Farm the Lord's land for protection. And their diets were absolutely horrible. What they ate was basically black rye bread, okay? And they drank beer that was made in the brewery of the Lords because it was safer to drink beer than it was to drink water. because obviously their water was not purified. And so the average life of a peasant in the Middle Ages in Europe was 35 years. 85% of the society was living on average 35 years. Okay, is that very long? No. What's the average lifespan of someone in the United States now? Does anyone know? Yeah. Yeah, it's right about 79 or 80. Think about that. So in 1,000 years, the average lifespan has gone from 35 up to 80. And that tells you why we have over 7 billion people on the earth today, too. If you think about it. Okay? So, this next picture is kind of goofy. This is just this is like a political cartoon or like a fake advertisement. It says, as the gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen, economic analysts predict that serfdom will continue to be the fastest growing field of employment. Get a head start, register for our evening classes, learn your skills now. You're almost certain to need them sooner or later. So what this is saying is basically you better learn how to farm, because if you don't own land, you're going to be stuck farming the rest of your life. And so are your kids, and so are their kids, and so are their kids. And so you guys haven't been in class, so I haven't really been able to tell you what the meaning of life is. But the meaning of life, like the dream, is that you are able to accomplish whatever you want, right? We live in a world where we want to be able to accomplish whatever we want to do. When you're a serf, there was no dreaming. You had one goal. You know what it was? Huh? No, not to farm. That sucked. But you had to do it to live. What was your goal? What's that? You're never going to be free. You're literally bound to the land for life, because you owe that in the feudal system, you owe that to your lord. To live past 30, that's the only good option. The goal is to go to somebody? Say it. Heaven. So the only goal that they had was to eventually think that they could go to heaven. Because yesterday I told you guys they became Christian. Does that make sense? So that's why the Catholic Church, and we'll talk about tomorrow, became so powerful, because so many people were stuck living in this manner of life and making very little money, okay, and having very little opportunity. Question, yes? What's that? Why would we be extinct? Because we would ruin all of the farmland? Yeah. So it was said in class here that if serfdom was still around, a lot of us wouldn't be here, and that's definitely the case. Another thing to think about is their technology and farming was so bad that they just crushed the earth, like took all of the minerals and nutrients out of it, and they didn't switch what they were farming. So like in Indiana, one field is planted with soybeans one year, the next field is planted with corn, the next year it's empty. And they rotate it so that you're providing nutrients back into the soil so you continue to get good crops. Well, they had to abuse the land so bad because they needed food so bad, and they didn't want to go, hungry, that they abuse the land, and eventually that land becomes infertile. It doesn't provide as much food. Okay, Zoomers, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I want to remind you, there's a couple of you that are on Zoom right now that have not taken the quiz from last week. Okay, if you take it at this point now, you need to actually send it to me as a Canvas message. Okay, 1, I can't even get on Skyward right now. 2, so if you send it to me as a message, at least it'll populate in my inbox, and I can go back tonight or, in all my everlasting free time here at school, which is a joke, it's none. I will be able to get it in, okay? So sorry about the video, folks. We'll get that figured out for the next couple of days. Your intro is due at the end of period 1 tomorrow. So if you're not done with your intro, you have to get that done by tomorrow at the whatever the class period. We have a 65-minute class period. Those of you who are coming to school tomorrow, make sure you bring your computers and bring your chargers, and make sure you set your alarm clocks now because it's really early, okay, especially if you have to get on the bus. All right, Zoom folks, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share. And you guys have a good day, okay? Any questions from the Zoomers? All right, thanks, folks.
See you,
Bye.
Yeah.
Mr. B.
Your day.